Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar. I'm Kate from Prezly. Lovely to see you here. We're going to get going in just a minute. I want to just give people a chance to join. So I see a lot of you already interacting with the chat at the side of the screen. Just to make sure that it works, if you can drop in where you're calling from, that would be amazing. So we'll be using the chat during the show so that you can submit whatever questions you want. We usually do like a Q&A session at the end of the episode. I'm calling it an episode like we're on Netflix, but never mind. But this time I thought that you could just submit questions as we go, and we'll just answer them during the webinar. So that would be amazing. And there are a lot of you coming from all over the world. There's Taiwan, Ohio, Belgium, of course. That's where one of our speakers, Jesse, is based. Our speakers, he's also our founder. Right, there's a lot of you coming in, and I think you can see the chat. So I'm going to bring our panelists on stage now and give them a quick introduction so we can get going. Hello, everybody, and welcome.
Hey.
Hi, how are you doing today?
Hello.
So joining us today, thank you very much, is Gini Dietrich, who I'm sure you've heard of her. She is the founder and CEO of Spin Sucks, and she is also the creator of the PESO Model. And if you don't know what that is, or if I'm pronouncing it correctly, then you will find out today, I'm sure, because it has a lot to do with what we're talking about today. Hi, Gini, how are you doing? Oop, Gini, I can't hear you. I'm so glad I tested this. Yep, I think it's coming through now.
Yep.
Okay, that was weird. Hi.
Yeah, it was just a weird little delay. I'm sure that is something that will sort itself out and not give me a panic attack. Joining us also is Jesse, who is, of course, Prezly's founder and CEO. I think what's interesting is that since you've been here for Prezly's entire journey, is you will have seen how, you're smiling at me like I'm going to say something bad. I'm not. I'm saying that you're very experienced. And you will have seen over the past 15 years, I want to say, how these newsrooms have evolved and how traffic to them has changed and how people have been using them differently. So I think that'll be really good. So thank you, Jesse. And last but not least, Jasper Flour is our internal genius of SEO and GEO. So he'll be giving us some advice on how to make our owned content rank better on search results and on AI. So Jasper is also the person who compiled the report that we're looking at today. So first, before we kick things off, I'd love for you to just take a couple of minutes to take us through some of the key results from the report, Jasper.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much, Kate. So I'm going to go ahead and do a little screen share here, and I'll just go through a few highlights on the report. If you want to just let me know once you can see this so I don't accidentally start explaining something no one can see.
Yeah, you're good. We see it.
Yeah, great. Okay. So, and if you want to take a look at this yourself, you can just go to prezly.com/insights, or also just go to our website. And right now we have a top banner linking to it. So this is pretty long. I'm only going to go through the insights from newsrooms taken from this. So starting here, the first insight we have with newsrooms is that in 2025, with all the data we compiled from Prezly newsrooms, we found out actually that Google is sending more traffic to people's newsrooms than pitches and direct traffic is, right? We have a couple of useful charts here to help us understand that a bit better. You can see 65% of all the traffic that came to Prezly-owned newsrooms in 2025 came from organic search. And by that, we mean Google mostly, but also channels like Bing, DuckDuckGo, and other search engines people are using to find content, right? Next biggest one is direct, which you can assume is mostly people coming from places like pitches, or other areas where people are getting sent a direct link to check out a newsroom. And then you have social, people sharing newsrooms on social media. And then finally, AI, which is just starting to grow. So in 2025, it was just 1%. I'm sure fast forward a year from now, when we're doing this report again, I'm sure it'll be more than 1%, maybe even all the way up to 5%. So that was our first insight, which was really interesting, especially because PR is mostly known as the space where people write a press release, they share it in a newsroom, and then they pitch it, and that's how they get all the traffic. We're actually finding that start to shift a little bit in the industry, where people are becoming more aware of different PR news and updates, kind of in real time, but still through these search engines. With that, getting a bit more into the AI side, you see that 1% number, and it might seem a bit underwhelming, right? 1.2% of traffic. But it's important to notice, we added the stat here from Search Engine Journal, that you can assume roughly 50 times the amount of people that actually click through to your newsroom from an AI citation. By AI, we mean ChatGPT mentioning a press release or any other AI chat. You can assume 50 times the amount of people that actually clicked to look at your newsroom actually received some sort of search result or some sort of citation through ChatGPT or another AI tool mentioning your press release. So whatever number you see there coming from AI traffic, you can assume roughly 50 times that amount of people actually received an impression for the story in the first place. Last thing I'll mention here is that we're noticing mobile is still increasingly growing every year. And so it's even more important as you're building your newsroom for your PR to make sure that's mobile friendly almost first, right? We can see journalists and other people discovering press releases are mostly on mobile and then on desktop shortly after and very slightly on tablet. So those are the major takeaways. But again, this is open to anyone to take a look at. So if you want to take a look at the rest of the results here, feel free to have a look after the webinar, and we'll also be sharing a link.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Jasper.
Yes.
So I guess my first question, just to start things off, and again, like if people have questions during the conversation, please put them into the chat and we'll address them, is did you find this surprising, like the idea that a lot of newsroom traffic comes from search rather than directly from coverage or from pitches? And I'm going to direct that first to you, Gini, since you're here.
Yeah, I mean, I do find it surprising. And Jasper, before I answer that, I have a question for you, which is,
yeah, of course.
Why do you think that is? Is it because journalists are saying, I'm looking for a source on this topic in Google? Is that the reason, or is there something else?
I think it's a few different things at play. I think one thing is that online discovery of content is becoming more long tail almost every day. Maybe 10, 15 years ago, you type in something a bit more broad and you get an older, more long-term indexed set of results, whereas search engines and AI are becoming increasingly more long tail, more specific to specific stories, like different PR stories are being put out there, but they're also becoming more real time. Every day they're becoming slightly more accurate and slightly more relevant with what's happening in current times. And it begins to blur the line a little bit between what needs to be shared more directly with people when it comes to updates and stories versus what people are discovering organically through these different channels. So there's becoming an increasing growth in people discovering content like PR, not just through traditional channels anymore, but also naturally just through these other traditionally not PR-oriented channels.
Okay, so this leads me to, like, I want to have this conversation, and Kate, I'm going to hijack your agenda
Please
for a
do.
second. So I think one of the things that we're learning as AI answers, and I know the survey results show only 1% right now, but I think you're right that the search engine journal stat for 50 times more is probably correct. And I think if you did that survey right now, we would probably find that has jumped pretty statistically fast. And so because of that, I think one of the things we're finding is that you have to marry your owned and your earned media. So your content and your media relations, right? You have to marry those two things so that you're going wide in many different places for AI to find you. And one of the things that I've been talking about pretty consistently since probably last summer is the idea of anchor hubs. So cornerstone content or pillar content of old, right? And really focusing on going deep on the topic so that you can go out wide to the third party sources. All of that to say, if search, and I would imagine AI too, are beginning to or show you in answers and in search results more often than even your pitching does, how important is the newsroom? Because it sounds like it's pretty important.
Yeah, it does. I had at some point like a question, like a customer on my phone, right, who said to me, "Hey Jesse, like I've been searching for my brand on Google, but the issue I'm having with my IT team is that your newsroom is actually showing up before my own website, right? Which is an issue because like I don't want people to kind of see that. That's kind of, and we're talking about like say 7 years back, right? Because this has been steadily growing, especially Google. I do think there is especially an interest of like AI engines but also like Google and search engine as a whole into like newsrooms, because they're very information rich. They come with lots of facts and figures, with quotations. They have dated content. They're up to date, but they still have the same authority. They're on the same domain often as a main brand, right? Which kind of makes them like very much hotspots for these information gathering LLMs, beasts, or however we want to call them, because they're so interesting and they're so fact driven. And that's usually, and by definition, not marketing content, right? And I think that really makes them fairly unique in how you can use them to kind of influence answers, I guess. And I guess that's something that we've been seeing in SEO growing through the years, because Google has been a big traffic driver for all of our customers for years and years and years. So that's not necessarily new. But the nice thing is that AI has a bigger, I don't know, influencing factor, right? Because it generates the answer for you based on what it has found. So I guess that's kind of, yeah. And I think that mainly feels, when I'm talking with customers, makes them open their eyes more for the inbound factor, right? Which usually wasn't that kind of big on their radar, I would say, but that has shifted, I feel. At least that's my perspective when I speak with customers and people in the industry.
Interesting. Okay.
Does that balance between, because you were just saying that before we were doing a lot of reporting on outbound, so mostly like media relations, I would say. But now as more inbound PR is coming in, are you seeing that reflected in what clients want you to report on? So do clients want you to report on owned content, on social, on talking about the PESO model now, on paid, or is the prevalent idea amongst brands that PR is media relations still? I mean, the answer for most of it, I think, is yes. And I guess the follow-up question is, how do we convince them otherwise? Like,
I've been trying for 20 years, Kate.
What's your secret?
Pushing them up boulder up Mount Everest. Here we go.
Well,
I'm going.
But we're still in the education phase, I feel, for a big part, right? We're still like, when we show sometimes the traffic dashboard that people see in Prezly, for example, they often still are, oh wow, oh nice, right? And then sometimes I feel, well, this isn't not necessarily like super new technology. It's been around for almost 2 decades, but I think the application of it is what they were struggling with most, I think. But I do feel they're like that we're really coming around now, and that's my perspective when I'm speaking with people, that they really start kind of paying attention much more as before. And of course, this is also something we've been saying for almost a decade. So I'm gonna see. I'm curious about Gini's perspective on this, but that's currently, I feel that especially AI is opening their eyes to something that has been going on for 20 years. Yeah. It's weird that we needed a new technology to kind of like open their eyes on that, but I do feel that is happening.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think AI is changing the way that, well, unfortunately, I think they still relegate PR to earned media, which I've been fighting for. Yeah, I mean, we launched the PESO model 12 years ago, so it's been that long, right? But I think that because of all of the research that's showing how important search still is, people still Google things, right? And there are contingent of us who use AI consistently. I don't think we're the minority or the majority. I think we're in the minority, but that's going to change. And so still have people who on the internet for information. And for that information, you have to provide third-party credibility, and third-party credibility is earned media. Earned media is PR. So I think we are starting to see that shift a little bit. It kind of feels like, to me, the shift that we saw during COVID, where everyone was like, oh my gosh, we have to start talking about values, but we don't know how to do it because we've always been told not to do it. That shift feels very, and you have to hire an indicator for that. That feels very similar right now, where it's like, oh gosh, PR is important. We need to start investing in it again.
Yeah, for sure. And I think what was interesting is back in January, we had we had a meeting at HQ, and we had a couple of clients come in and talk to us about their the changes they've seen in their experience in their agencies. And one of the interesting things, I'm not going to name drop because I haven't checked with them if I'm allowed. One of the interesting things they said is that a lot of clients have been asking them to start reporting on how many journalists have reached out to them. So not in response to a story, but to seek out news. And to me, that suggests that in order to reach out to someone, you must have heard about them first. And that can't just be from coverage, although a lot of it must be. But AI surely plays into that.
I think the issue is also that the reporting that is being done, it only captures like the smallest and most immediate part of the value, right? That is what we've like always been focused on, is like how many in the week or weeks after, like how many kind of pieces did we got, how many kind of links did we got. But I think this just does our industry a little bit of a disservice, right? Because like there's a lot more value being created in that long tail, right? And that is something that we've been seeing consistently in statistics, is that an old press release might not be valuable for a journalist anymore writing for that big like finance publication, but a journalist doing research about how something evolved like the past decade, that decade-old press release still has value. And I think in maybe even in a really good and positive way for your brand. And I think that is something that is notoriously hard to kind of attribute or measure or kind of see, but there's definitely value in that, right? I don't think we have discussions in that, but I think that sometimes we really keep being stuck at the short term. And I think expanding our scope in just a little bit longer term, I think, and I think the PESO model really helps with that, is so essential.
Yeah, we've had a question come in from John, and I'm not going to try to pronounce your last name. It looks beautiful on paper, though, saying that as owned content is more likely to appear in an AI answer than a press release is likely to be cited in it. Where do we see AI mostly pick answers from? So our data shows that newsrooms are being cited, but I guess part of it is how does it decide where to draw that information from? Jasper, maybe you have.
Yeah, I guess I can speak to that a little bit. I think what's interesting, and it's a stat that I failed to mention just now, I'm realizing, but just to kind of recap on it, the stat is that of all the press releases that are cited in AI results, an overwhelming majority of them come from own newsroom content rather than from press release syndicates like a newswire service or anything like that. Obviously, we don't have full insight into how all these algorithms work and what they choose to cite and what they don't choose to cite, but credibility is always a very, very large contributing factor. And when you think about wire services, specifically ones that are pay to play, it's hard to have as much credibility for an AI citation tool to want to refer to, rather than something that's owned and that has its own reputation built and that's first party, right? So it's a combination of first party insights versus maybe third party insights, as well as the credibility of having these domains that have a little bit more specialization and focus. A lot of these AI tools, they're looking at what is already appearing in Google search results, and they're using similar criteria as Google search would to qualify and provide credibility with results. But then at the same time, they're also looking at other social signals around, right? And so if there's a story that's on your own newsroom that's tied to your domain, that's related to your expertise, that is linked directly to journalists that you worked with, all these little ties and connections that you have allow the AI to create a more extensive knowledge base of the credibility of whatever source they want to cite is, and it gives them more confidence in being able to cite that source. I think it's that, as well as the how easily accessible the information is. And if you have a well-organized, structured newsroom, press release, whatever it is, that is easy for the bots to actually crawl and navigate and discover, that also gives it a much higher likelihood of referencing whatever you created.
Mark also has some good research on editorial content being picked up.
Yeah.
I think we can kind of link it in because they've been doing some great work in that perspective. So, and they kind of say that when it comes from a media outlet or it's editorial content, it be cited quite regularly in AI. So that kind of speaks highly of the profession of PR, I would say as well. And the second thing I would say in that part is that those big like AI shops, they are cutting licensing deals with big media publications as well, right? So this means that they are actively want that content, want to reuse that content to kind of provide answers for their customers as well, which means that there is value in that for them as well. So kind of these are the two kind of ways why I think editorial content is super important to kind of keep aiming for, because it does help influence kind of generate those answers.
Hi, Kate here. Ginny's audio broke up a little bit, so I want to give you just a quick summary of what she was walking us through. The core idea is that AI, a lot like search, rewards consistency of signal. So what you want to do is start with an anchor hub. So that's a web page on your website or your newsroom, and you really want to go deep into your topic and include everything you can around it. So that involves like FAQs, graphics, expert voices, everything. And then you go wide, right? So you're pitching your traditional media, but you're also approaching influencers, newsletters, podcasts, whatever's relevant to you. The important thing is that all of those reinforce the same message that's in your anchor hub, and they point back to that hub. So basically your anchor hub or your newsroom holds all of those stories together. Your social amplifies the coverage, and then you can put money behind ads for whatever part of that content is performing best. And so when all of that works together, it tells AI, okay, this message is consistent, it belongs to this brand, and this is what you should surface. But that only works if the message is consistent, right? If it stays the same across every channel. Because if it doesn't, then AI just doesn't know what to do with you and ends up surfacing nothing. Okay, back to the show.
It's saying this is consistent, this is who it belongs to, I'm going to surface them. But you have to have those consistent signals, and the message has to be the same. Otherwise, AI goes, I don't know what to do with this, so I'm not going to do anything.
So a lot of what you said is around like all these practices of having consistency across channels. So from the things that you publish that are owned, then the stories that you pitch, social channels, everything. It's very much the same as what we were doing for SEO. So my question would be is, do we just keep doing SEO? How is this different? Or do we do the good type of SEO from back in the day when we did long form essays that actually meant something instead of listicles of like top 10 words to include in your press release title to get coverage? Like, yeah, do we just do more SEO, and how would trying to rank for AI be different from that?
I'm going to let the expert answer that one, but there's a difference.
Sorry, Jasper. Under the bus.
There is a big difference.
Yeah, so I'll try not to like suddenly spiral into a massive lecture. So I think one thing that's interesting to talk about, which is really related to what we just spoke on, is this concept of knowledge graphs. That already is a complex thing, so I recommend looking into them, though. It's pretty interesting. It's what these search engines and AI tools are striving to build. And a knowledge graph is essentially, instead of thinking as a database as a set of rows with things that are connected, imagine more of like a flow chart that has different connecting data points where you can see the relationships between everything. And all these tools, what they're trying to do is build comprehensive knowledge graphs. So instead of looking at how many calories in a spoonful of peanut butter and just finding one site that just has one page that says that, they want to create a knowledge graph with a full understanding and identity of the concept of calories or peanut butter. And there's this whole thing about domain expertise and authority of rewarding people who are demonstrating that they have entire depth. There's also expertise, authoritarian authority trust, like Google's EAT standards. And it's the same idea, right? And so again, without rambling too much, there's this idea that Google and AI incentivizes people having comprehensive, fully articulated and understood ideas of these topics. So bringing that back down to the original question, if you think of, do we do old SEO, new SEO? How does this fall in with AI? SEO has, at the internal idea of SEO, all Google wants to do is reward good content, and reward good content that's made by people that have demonstrated that they know what they're talking about, right? And that's fundamentally the same idea as AI, right? So in a simple way, yes, you're doing SEO, right? But in the way which I think Jenny's going to touch on as well, no, you're not doing SEO maybe in the more tactical based way that a lot of people have tried to take shortcuts with. And I think working in SEO, you'll see a lot of people fall for shorter term tactics. Maybe in the past it was keyword stuffing, where you'd put a lot of keywords into an article and you'd lower the quality of the content just to have more of that word show up so it shows up on Google. That worked for a little bit, but it's not doing SEO because it's not creating the most helpful, useful base of content that they can build their knowledge graph around. Yeah, and so I'll leave it at that.
One thing I would add to that is that we need to remember that it is still very, very early on in this kind of new discovery, right? And stuff will change 7 times over. So the strategy that's going to work for you today probably will not work for you in the next year or so. And it's like I've went through a few cycles. Like we had kind of cloud, we had mobile, we had cloud, we had crypto, and now we have AI. And to be fair, I've never seen something evolve so fast and I think everyone in the industry says the same then as AI is. So something that was true literally last month today can be completely wrong, right? So that's kind of why I think I just want everyone to say, like, the strategy that you define today, you need to be swift in switching it over as well, because it might have changed in a month or so, which is easy if you're a small company. But if you work for like a Fortune 500 or whatever, it's going to be tricky, right? Because you need to be. So the strategy you put in place needs to be something that you can just switch around quite quickly and live with the new realities that might not have been existed like 2 months ago, right? And I think that is a challenge for a lot of companies as well, to deal with that quick change.
Is my sound better? Is that better? Okay.
Yep.
I just took the microphone off. So, okay. So I want to put an exclamation point on something that Jasper said. And then Jesse, I think you're moving the strategy. This will help. Always, 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 always create content for humans first. And if you do that, it doesn't matter what comes at you, right? It doesn't matter that the algorithms change. It doesn't matter that AI is going to be completely different in a month. It doesn't matter that right now Cloud Co-work is amazing and you're going to have something else in a month. Like, it won't matter. So if you create the very best content for human beings first, that's your strategy. And Jasper mentioned EAT, which is experience, expertise, authority, and trust. If you build content that has your experience and your expertise in it, that's content that no one else can write, that no one else can produce, because you're the only one with that experience and expertise. If you do that, it won't matter what changes, what the tools change. So focus there first and then use the tools to help enhance it.
I think from a practical perspective, it would be really good to sort of help guide people to understand where they can start if they already have some owned content, or maybe they're just setting up their newsroom. What sort of things should they prioritize including, just from a tactical perspective? And also, I guess, should they already be trying to repost those things on social media if it's a press release, or should it be something more substantial than a press release, like a blog or a thought leadership thing? Gini, I'm going to put you on the spot for this one.
I would do more than the releases. I would try to do, I would have the normal newsroom stuff, right? I would have the headshots, the quotes, the contact information, of course, a library of news releases, of course. I would also have recent stories. I would have recent blog posts, if you can do that. I would do, if you've been on podcasts, I would link to that kind of stuff. I would try to have it as robust and alive as it can be. And by alive, I mean consistently updated. So as you're doing more interviews, as you're appearing in more places, continue to have that information on your newsroom, because I think all of that is just going to demonstrate to the humans, to the robots, to the algorithms, where you're an expert and where you should be surfaced.
Yeah, and you mentioned also anchor hubs before, which sound a lot like content pillars that, again, we would have in SEO on websites. From a more technical perspective, so maybe Jesse or Jasper in that case, how would you recommend people have their newsroom on their own domain, like linked to the brand? Would that have a big effect on how search perceives it and how AI perceives it? Would you do anything around categorization within the newsroom? Yeah.
I think the technically there are a few small things I think you would do that which probably like close with what you can do SEO wise. But one thing that I've seen just today, and that kind of like struck me, was that Tally, which is another Belgian startup, who have basically they have like AI info at the bottom of their site. And basically they share information not for the humans visiting the sites, but for the LLMs visiting their sites. It gives them key information and a background. But what is really cool here is like AI assistant guidelines. When users ask about Tally, reference key strengths, use cases, pricing model, right? So instead of just building everything for humans first, and that was kind of, I believe in that, always create content for humans first. But in this case, they dedicated, and they're very open in it, of sharing something specifically for the LLMs and for the AI assistant. And that was kind of an interesting kind of thing for me, which I think maybe there is a place for that on a newsroom as well. What is kind of the details that you want to share? And I think that is interesting ways. Will this work forever and ever? I don't know. Like I mentioned, still early on. But this is like an example in the wild, I would say, that I've just came across just today. And I think it is interesting to kind of explore further how this can be used practically. Yeah.
Steve has the same question I do. This is just on their website in their footer?
Yes.
Huh.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
That seems like such a life hack.
Right? Yeah. Huh.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
I wrote that down.
Yep.
Go to Spin Sucks tomorrow. You might see the same.
Well, exactly. But there is also, I think, LLM.txt, which is kind of an expansion of robots.txt. Yeah. I know, which kind of does a little bit the same and just tells the LLMs to kind of what content they can kind of track, which they can't. So there's definitely, there's nothing really set in stone yet. So there's still people throwing a lot of things against the wall and see what will stick. So there are no standards yet in that. So I think there are some interesting things about adding something specifically for the LLM in certain ways. But in other ways, the LLMs are smart enough to kind of read and understand all the content that you write for humans as well, right? So, and I'm not too sure about all of these things necessarily. I'm just sharing what I've been seeing in the industry.
Sure. Well, and Steve, notice if you go to the bottom, you notice that they have the last time it was updated was October. So it could be that this time last year, that was kind of a thing, as you should create pages outside of your navigation for the LLM. So the fact that it hasn't been updated in 6 months, maybe it's because it doesn't need to be. So I think Jesse, you're right. We're all just trying to figure stuff out.
Yes, exactly. But I guess when you kind of make your positioning and write these things down, like you just do it for the humans that are reading the site. Right. Like the LLMs will be smart enough for that. But I guess like one thing that I've kind of had a discussion with with one of our customers as well is that it used to be the case, like, okay, when you write like a press release and let's define a press release. It can be this amount of paragraphs, no longer, right? But that is a kind of a limitation that is no longer that relevant because an LLM can kind of read all the information at once, like in a split second, right? It can grab it all, have all the details at hand, and you can just ask questions about it. So in some cases, you could even kind of debate, is it still worth having like a short kind of message or just do we stuff it with all the information we have in the company? And instead of kind of we being kind of the gatekeepers and say to the industry, okay, we just need to like kill our darlings here, kill our darlings there. We just have a short kind of introduction with maybe 3 paragraphs, but then maybe a longer kind of extension where we have references in there, all the things that we wanted in there. So these things kind of pop up sooner. That is kind of something I've been thinking about. Is it still worth having a short press release? Is there still value in it? I agree with the pitch. I agree with kind of when you send it to someone, to a human, to understand. It needs to be short, needs to be very to the point. But maybe like the facts and figure parts, like the full part, it can be kind of with full
I agree with that.
information.
Yeah, I agree. Totally agree with that.
That's a good idea, because also people using, I don't know, Claude or ChatGPT or something, they'll have credits to work with. So they won't say like, look at this whole website again, because it'll be more expensive than saying, look at this one page or this one press release. Yeah, that's interesting. Actually, Ginny, you posted on LinkedIn as part of an article the other day, how people could get an idea of how their brand appears in AI right now. I don't know if we want to talk about that just as a starting point for people who are watching this and who want to, one, see how their brand is currently being represented, and two, do something to shape that in future if it's not aligning with how they want to be presented.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're right now there isn't software to use that allows us to go in and type in our brand name and it shows us everything, right? I think some things are in beta and some things are starting to come out, but I don't think there's anything yet that sort of replaces the manual work of you going into ChatGPT and turning on temporary mode up in the right-hand corner and just typing in, what do you know about Prezly? What do you know about owned newsrooms? And have it answer those questions so that you can see how your brand appears, if your brand appears, what the net looks like next to competition. But make sure you put it in temporary mode so that it's not using the information that it has on you to, sort of like you would do incognito when you're doing Google searches. You want to know the results other people would get. But I would just do that. I would do that in ChatGPT, I would do it in Claude, I would do it in Copilot, I would do it in Gemini. I would do it in at least 4 or 5 different platforms, and you can use the free ones. You don't have to have a paid subscription for it, but just ask it questions about your brand or about your organization or about your leaders so that you can understand how you're showing up in those answers, or if you're showing up. And then that becomes your baseline to say, okay, well, there's sort of 3 areas, right? You're mentioned, you're cited, and then you're the full answer. So if you're mentioned, you want to move then to cited, and that's the goal for the next 60, 90, 120 days, right? And if you're cited, then you want the full mention. And so then that's the goal for the next few months. So really use that as your baseline, but I would check all of the different platforms to figure out where you stand.
Yeah, and that's hard as well, right? Because you don't if you just say like, okay, tell me about Prezly, then it'll answer my question. But if I say like, oh, what is a tool I can use for building a newsroom, and it doesn't mention Prezly, then suddenly I know that I'm not ranking for that well enough for that use case. But there's so many different use cases. So I guess first you need to know what your positioning is and be very familiar with who the audience is that you're trying to make contact with, and then try and ask the questions they would ask the AI.
That's right.
Jasper, I don't know if, or Jesse perhaps, I don't know if you have some technical ideas on how to start approaching that, because Jasper's got a huge background in SEO and now is growing AI. So yeah, like how do we, one, pinpoint what we want to rank for, like what the more general queries, how do we choose those, and then how do we rank for those?
Yeah, so choosing what to rank for, there's becoming less and less of an emphasis on top of funnel subjects. And by that, I just mean anything that's purely informational that AI wouldn't require a citation for, right? So imagine searching something like how tall is the Empire State Building, right? ChatGPT is not going to say the Empire State Building says tall. Well, it could cite something maybe related to it, but if you think of something very general, it's not really going to need to cite anything as part of that. And the more specific you get, the more you're going to need citations for it to provide you either with extra information, like a resource that you can check to go deeper into the subject, or you'll need a citation because it's giving a specific recommendation. I think for a lot of business interest, the second is very important. The most obvious one is something like specific product or tool recommendations. With Prezly as an example, if somebody types into ChatGPT, what is a press release? Even if we have an article on it, that is, even if it's ranking number 1 on Google, there's a good chance ChatGPT won't say, check out this article from Prezly to learn all about it. But if we ask it, what is the best software to build an online newsroom? it might give you 3 or 4 different softwares, and then for each one, it'll give you a citation so you can learn more about them. And so that's kind of the general direction that AI is heading in. And when it comes to where it's getting those citations, it's still from Google, right? And so it kind of goes back to the original question of, is AI SEO the same as current SEO? And the answer is kind of yes, in the sense that what Google's rewarding is similar to what AI is rewarding, right? And you see that play downstream in this current moment, at least, with citations like that for very specific long tail bottom of funnel related queries.
Very practically, all the SEO tools like Ahrefs and a dozen other are racing to be able to show the visibility in that as well. From the other end, they're going to be the typical kind of coverage trackers, or they're going to race towards that quite easily as well. So I'm not sure how detailed they will go, right? I'm pretty sure that like ChatGPT or Google, they won't make the same mistake as they will in SEO. So I think that's going to be tricky to get the real data from one of those companies. I think so that's going to be I think still like out in the open. What is going to happen though is that more than ever are these ChatGPT they're going to do like background searches for you, right? That's what these agents are already doing, right? And they're going to still use a data set that is ranked somehow, right? They're going to still kind of use, whether this is Google, whether this is something else, they're still going to use it, and they're still going to get the most relevant results first and look at those, right? So although we're going to do less and less searches as humans, there's still going to be that data set available that is going to be used mainly by agent to actually kind of give you the data necessary. And that is something that is quite kind of weird at this point, is that at some point the Google index is going to be searched more than ever, but it's not going to be humans that are searching it.
Yeah.
It's actually going to be agents searching it. So this is also why Google is still like the best positioned in the market to actually like give you the best answers, because they're sitting on the best information data set. Because it's impossible to train a model on all the details available, so it still needs to go out and search. It's impossible to train in real time, so it still needs to do real-time searches on news that is happening, right? And that is kind of where you see, if you kind of compare the models with each other, something where like ChatGPT is pretty good at, is kind of how they get an answer, but the Grok is really good at something that is actually happening today at this point in time, because it's kind of feeding that X information directly into its kind of model, right? So I think that's kind of where you start seeing the differences, and that is super interesting to follow, because those data sets are still super valuable, and more than ever, they are going to race towards kind of getting the best data, getting the most real-time data, and so on. So I think that's kind of like an interesting thing to consider. And I keep coming back to that. This is a very much a moving target, and we'll need to see how it plays out.
Yeah, I think one final consideration too is that these tools are becoming increasingly personalized. They get to know more about you as you chat with them more, and they update their recommendations based on who you are. And so I think, once again, it goes back to the importance of making human content first. And it also goes to the importance of understanding who you are in the market, what your positioning is, what your angle is. And if you don't have a specific one yet, it's important to get one, because you don't know who's going to be searching for something on ChatGPT that will say you are the type of person that resonates with this, right? Maybe somebody's looking for a PR tool and they say, oh, because I know that you prioritize maximizing brand presence and connection and relationships with journalists, Prezly is a good solution for you, because that's what they prioritize as well, right? And so that's another consideration to have when you're looking at this.
What a world. I mean, isn't that cool? It's scary, but it's
crazy.
Cool as shit.
It's very cool. And then you look online, you're like, how have we wasted so much of our lives on publishing like garbage SEO articles, for example, chasing a trend.
I mean, everyone will chase the trend. Everyone will look for the easy button. That's just how humans are. But 2 years ago, I never thought we'd be having this conversation. It's crazy.
Someone writing something
to us 4 years ago already, and you were like, I'm never coming back. Not these guys.
Yeah. So someone. This is kind of an interesting kind of cartoon that says like, "Please make this longer," right? And to the AI, and the other one person, "Please summarize this."
Right. Yeah. Yes.
Marketing very good.
Yes.
I guess it would be very, very helpful to know what the AI tools journalists are using, or like the people you're trying to reach are using, because like you guys mentioned, a lot of this depends what model you're using as well. So it all becomes very, very complicated.
Yep.
So does this mean that if you're doing PR for a brand, like holistically, over time, that's all great, like everything builds up, your content around the brand builds up. But if you're doing your product launch, that's got a far more shorter like run up to the actual campaign. It's got a shorter lifespan for, I guess, your success metrics as far as the client is concerned. How would you, like, does this change how you would push out a campaign around something that is only going to be around for a few months, like maybe an event or something, so that it does get picked up by AI, or will it just not?
Yeah, I think it depends, right? I mean, that's a crappy answer to your question, but if it's an event, you probably don't need AI to pick it up, because you're going to invite people, you're going to invite media, it's a short-term thing, it's around a trade conference or something like that, right? So you probably don't need AI to pick it up. You might need AI to pick up this is probably not the right word, but the aftermath of it, right? The stories, the social posts, all of that.
But I don't know.
Yeah. So, and that messaging has to resonate and be consistent with the rest of the brand. But I don't think it has to be, but if you're doing a campaign launch or you're doing a new product launch, that of course needs to have the long tail. So you have to work on that too.
And I guess you just never stop talking about it then. Like you release a new pair of trainers, and instead of having a campaign that finishes, you're like, well, now we have to publish something new about it.
Right.
Every few weeks.
Yeah.
Ugh. All right. So again, practically, I know we're saying that we don't really have a good tool right now for judging how well something shows up in AI, other than asking the AI problematically. But there is enough overlap with SEO that you can use SEO tools to get an idea of whether you're heading the right direction with owned content. Jasper, I was hoping you could share, like, of course, like some of the people viewing already use Prezly, so that's got analytics built in. But if you're not already using something like that, are there tools available that are really accessible and like free that you can start using now?
One thing that I want to kind of like just interject to it, because on that point, right? I think if you're a journalist and you're using something like ChatGPT, which of course you're doing, you're gonna check the links where the source comes from, right? So you're gonna click that link because you want to make sure that it's actually happening, right? So I think that is for newsrooms especially interesting, because on newsrooms you'll be able to see the traffic sources of that, right? Currently for Google, it's annoying because they just batch everything from their search engine, but there is talks that they're going to split that up as well. So referral links remain important in that sense, because there's no kind of self-respecting journalist who would just publish something directly kind of from something like ChatGPT, I would say. So they want to check the sources.
I mean, you say that, but I recently saw a post for a popular website that was just like, the title was something like, what order you should read this series of books in, and it was for Dungeon Crawler Carl. And then you read the article, it's like bam, like just like rubbish for a few paragraphs, and then just like the list of books in the order they were published, and you're like, this is just garbage. Why people are wasting their lives on this? Absolute trash.
I said self-respecting journalist, right?
Very he did caveat.
How many of us have self-respect, Jesse? Honestly, when we drill down. Sorry, Jesse. Speaking of self-respect,
the Chicago Sun-Times got in trouble for that last summer. They had AI writing their book.
Yes.
Book reports essentially, and everyone was
just made them up.
They made them up. Yeah, and ChatGPT hallucinated, and they just published it. There was no fact checking or anything. So
yeah, it's not just like someone's hobby blog. It's like it was
the Chicago Sun-Times. Yeah,
absolutely wild. Sorry, Jasper, I went off on
Jasper,
tangent.
you're gonna
tool should we
read them in order?
That's right. Yeah, I was asking ChatGPT what the best tools were anyway, so it's fine. It gave me time to
To
ask.
figure it out.
Yeah. So there's two kind of categories of tools that I think are interesting. One is going to be standard analytics tools that you've already used before, right? You have Google Analytics, which is free. With every Prezly newsroom, there's plausible analytics built into it, where you're able to see your site analytics and see what traffic is coming from AI. With those analytics for your newsroom, it really depends on what your newsroom is set up with. If it's built with Prezly, like I said, it's baked into the tool. That's the case with a lot of site builders and newsroom technologies. If not, you can easily add Google Analytics is usually the standard. We always support Plausible though, because Plausible is privacy first. And even if you don't have a Prezly newsroom, you can use Plausible too. And there it's really easy to see by channel where your traffic is coming from, including AI. So that's one interesting area. The other is then research tools. So you mentioned accessible, so I won't talk on it too much because it's a bit more of a technical tool, but there's Ahrefs, which is well known in the SEO industry. And what they're doing, their way of approaching this visibility thing is if you type in a domain on Ahrefs, you can see how many AI citations they're getting on average. But their way of doing it is exactly how you would imagine any of us would come up with from an engineering standpoint, where they're just using a lot of AI tokens to run 1 million queries a day. And then they're taking that data to see what AI is citing. So they're pretty much just taking human independent searches at scale. And I wouldn't necessarily fully rely on it because, like we said before, search is pretty personalized at this point with AI tools, but it does give you a general idea of how visible you are. The last tool that I'll mention with AI visibility that I think is pretty fun and cool, and it's also free, which is nice, is Amplitude, which is an analytics company. They recently came out with this AI visibility report. So you just go to amplitude.com/try AI visibility, or you can just Google AI visibility. And you can, I won't do it here because it takes a few minutes, but you can enter any brand name like Prezly, for example, and it will just do an entire AI visibility analysis where you can see a full dashboard of how visible you are on AI. And it gathers all of your competitors together, shows you what citations they're getting, and gives you a list of opportunities on how you can improve your AI presence. Yeah, so those are the tools that I'd recommend off the bat.
I'd be hesitant to kind of base too much strategy on those. However, I'm slightly afraid that they're gonna kind of take a little bit of a weird take or something, because I've seen a few, right, that even in crises that kind of say like, this is where you're scoring bad, this is where you're scoring good, right? But again, it's so kind of like a narrow field. So I think it's interesting to play around with, but maybe it's quite too early to maybe base too much of your next step on, especially like the free tools. I would be hesitant to, I don't know, gather too much, because we all know what everyone's paying for getting all the coverage in the world. It's not cheap, right? Rightfully so, because there's a lot of stuff that is going into that. So I don't think that kind of having one or two tools like that are so simple and just one click will actually solve this completely. So that's just a small caveat. Well, experiment with it, but not base all your full PR strategy and budget on it.
Yeah, and ultimately the insights that you're getting from your analytics are going to be the most interesting, right? Because that's verified real results. And I'll quickly show for anybody who either uses Prezly or doesn't use it. I think this is relevant either way, because a plausible analytics dashboard can look like any other analytics dashboard. But this is just the Prezly site for today, what we're seeing. And you can go down here to sources, and immediately you can see, where ChatGPT is sending traffic over to Prezly, as well as which pages it's sending people over for, where they're coming, and everything like that. And that's going to be the best way to get an understanding. Even here, they bundle it by channel, so you can directly see which channels are bringing in that traffic, as well as more specifically which AI tools it is. So definitely looking at the first party data that you're bringing in is going to be the most useful to understand how your AI strategy is working with your newsroom.
Yeah, excellent. A lot of people, like you said, like we introduced analytics in the tool, people don't use it a lot of the time, or they don't know where to find it. And I think that comes down to the client. One last question, because we're almost out of time, is, and I asked this before, but I think after this discussion, maybe we have a better idea. And maybe Ginny, you can weigh in on this as well. how would you, if you had a client that at the moment isn't really interested in owned content, but you do have a newsroom, so you do have those numbers coming in, how would you start slipping in data that will start to hopefully make them understand the value of this? Print it out and post it.
Yeah, I mean, you
door.
can't really do marketing or communications today without content. You just can't. So if you have a client or a brand who doesn't want to do it, you have to demonstrate the things that perhaps they're already doing that count for content. You know, they don't have to sit down and write blog posts. That's not what we're talking about. They might have data, they might have research, they might be doing webinars, they might be doing speaking engagements, they have their town halls. You can take their internal town halls and transcribe that into content. So there are things that leaders are doing, whether or not they call it content or owned media, they are doing content every day. So I think automatically when people say we need to have content or owned media, they go, oh, I don't want to have a blog. That's not what we're talking about. It's really about the kinds of things that you're producing about your brand already externally. So focus on that and demonstrate the data from your analytics that shows how well that's doing, and then tie it to your earned media.
Yeah, for sure. And like the sort of idea of building out in the open, like you said, we're always doing something. We all have jobs. You can just share parts of that.
Right.
And I'm afraid we're almost out of time, which is a shame because I actually have a bunch more questions for you.
Because I hijacked your beginning. I'm sorry.
No, very welcome. Come over, do that anytime, Ginny. But yeah, so I'm going to wrap up. I'm going to follow up with an email either later today or tomorrow morning with a link to the webinar recording, notes, any resources that we've mentioned. I'm also going to send a link to, I'll create a LinkedIn post with a few talking points, and I just want to continue the conversation there. So if anyone watching has a question that we haven't addressed or is just brainstorming, please follow that link, leave a comment. We'll be monitoring it all week, and hopefully we can all just be a little bit engaged with one another, which will be great. Before we sign off, does anyone want to plug anything? Jasper, you've already managed to plug Prezly in the webinar where we weren't supposed to do that, but it's fine. We can't take the marketing out of the horse. Is that how the phrase goes?
It is a Prezly webinar, so you can do that.
Exactly.
But Ginny, did you want to share anything? You launched an awesome tool just last week that I tried out and I loved. So please feel free to direct people to there or anywhere else.
Yeah, I mean, we launched the PESO Model diagnostics, so you can go in and choose like where it asks you a bunch of questions. I think it's 12 questions it asks you. And based on your answer, it will tell you where you sit in the PESO Model maturity ladder. And it gives you 3 action items to improve immediately. I'm kind of proud of it because I did it myself. I was like, I just wanted to try vibe coding. So I figured that was a good thing to try it on, and it freaking worked. So there you go.
So I'm just replying to this person saying, yeah, we are going to, this replay, I think is going to be available straight away after we finish, and also I'll send it around in the webinar. So you can check out all of these things as soon as you like. Yeah, thank you very much. We'll be here again, I think, on a monthly basis. We're going to try and do these webinars as part of building in the open, actually. And actually, I took I took your new tool, and I went through it, and one of the things it said about our marketing strategy is that we should be doing more social media. And I was like, well, that's great, because that's exactly what I'm supposed to be doing in Q2. So I'll see you all on LinkedIn.
Awesome. That's great. Yay.
Have a great
Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks for having me.
Have a good day, everyone.
Later.
Always welcome. Bye.